Up. All right. How are we doing now? That's better. Hey everybody. Hey everybody, and welcome to Satsang. Somebody told me they didn't get the email for a Satsang today. I'm trusting it went out. It's an automated system that seems to work all the time, but because there's usually more people here by now. So let me just refresh and see what it looks like over here. And we're live now. Turn off the sound. Wait for my chats to show up before watching now. Hi everybody, and welcome. Just got the notification, huh? Oh. Maybe there was a little mess up in the system, right? People are joining. I will just play here for a little bit until we get a quorum going on. Hey, Josh, just got the notification. Brian said it just popped up not a minute ago. I wonder why the delay on the system. Eva says, "Namaste, happy to this great possibility to listen to you from Poland." Brian in Virginia, great to be here. Yeah, we usually get more by this time, but there must have been something wrong with the announcements. Right before I got on here, somebody had told me that they hadn't received it. Well, I'm not gonna stop now and check and do all the techie stuff. I'll just sit here for a bit. So I hope you've all come prepared with great questions. I always like to start by reminding everybody that Satsang is a rather unique opportunity. It's an invitation for you to just completely step out of the normal grind, the normal momentum of our lives that absorbs so much time. Step back into a place where you can ask the questions that really humanity needs to be asking. We could use a whole lot more self-reflection in our governments, couldn't we? We could use many more people who are just stopping for a moment to question what's actually going on inside of them. What is the reality of our being? What is the true meaning of things? Is it just the acquiring of more wealth, of more objects, more power, more influence? It's not the kind of thing that I want to say what the answer is. Because if I say what the answer is, then it's not really yours. So Satsang is the place where you explore it for yourself. And I'm just always so delighted that people show up to engage in this level of conversation. Let's see. Rosario, thank you, G, for your time and your love. Rohan says, hi, G, loving the title. Resonates with me. Ursula, hello all. Ursula from Madeira. Madeira, do I say it pronounce it correctly? Madeira Island in Portugal. So, where else? Where are the rest of you from? There are several more that keep coming. Yes, I was saying, satsang is an opportunity to explore what's really true, right? Not what we think is true, not what we wish was true, but what actually is true. Now, the fact of the matter is that anybody who's ever done this has discovered that what is really true is orders of magnitude more beautiful and vast and profound than what we thought was true or what we wished was true. And that not only does it liberate us from our imaginary preconditions to life, it actually liberates our life as well to be everything that it has the potential to be. And therein lies the great mystery of it. But the approach for realizing that is, in fact, very, very simple, which is why I named this this particular satsang, Loving Right Now. Right this moment. Loving this moment just as it is. And it's a hard thing to do, admittedly. But the only reason it's hard is because we are convinced, we have all sorts of ideas as to what we think life should be like. And when our life isn't matching up to our idea of what we think it should, we experience suffering. That's the suffering gap right there. What's actually happening and what we think should be happening. What we think should be happening is totally imaginary. We made it up. Now, truth be told, you didn't really make it up in the sense that you worked it all out perfectly, like on your vision board or something like that. Your idea of the way life should be was actually programmed into you when you were very young. Your parents, and of course your parents represented the larger cultural reality that's programmed into every single one of us and stays there until we question it. There's a wonderful quote from sailor Bob Admonson, who titled a book, What's Wrong with Right Now If You Don't Think About It? And that's such a powerful, ironic phrase. The fact of the matter is, everything that's going on right now is what's supposed to be going on right now. How do I know it's supposed to be going on right now? Because it's going on right now. Nisargadatta said, destiny is what happens. So obvious and to the point. Which means if you have an argument with what's going on right now, you're wrong. Simple as that. If you have an argument with life, you're wrong. And so we have to actually come to the point where you totally, with total equanimity, accept that this moment that you're experiencing is exactly what you're supposed to be experiencing. Without comparing it to what somebody else might be. You know, you might be going through a real tough time, struggling with money or something, and somebody else is just sailing along and, you know, all sorts of stuff is coming to them. We might be tempted to think, my life should be like that, right? Well, obviously, part of one of the things we have to accept and have no resistance to is our own preferences. But we also have to accept the reality that oftentimes our preferences are not fulfilled. So yeah, everybody would rather have live in wealth than in poverty. But if you find yourself in a position of that, the best approach is to say, thanks for everything. I have no complaint whatsoever. Remember I told you the story of the Zen master that was in her advice to the young monk to go away and practice that. Thanks for everything. I have no complaint whatsoever. That is a sense of equanimity towards what is happening. With kind of a underlying feeling that, well, yeah, it's not what's happening for them, but this is what's happening for me. This is my life. Anthony de Mello made a beautiful statement. He said, enlightenment is total acceptance of total surrender to the inevitable. Now that doesn't mean, when I talk about that, or I'll talk about the yoga of allowing, it doesn't mean you just sit there and you don't do anything to change. You just kind of, yeah, this is it. It's like, this is God's will. There's no way out of it. It's not like that at all. Because it's natural for us to want to grow and evolve and expand. It's natural for us to want success. It's natural for us to want, intimacy and depth in our relationships. All of those are part of the natural flow of life as well. All of our desires need to be embraced. all of our wants and yearnings also need to be embraced. Because it is what is arising in this moment. But to say that this desire shouldn't be there or this circumstance shouldn't be happening, in that moment you've literally created the egoic mind. The egoic mind, the word ego is a word that simply represents all of the various energies of resistance. Simple as that. I've said before that mind isn't a thing. Mind is a word that kind of sums up or abstracts what in fact is a very complex set of functions. Like the body, 100 trillion cells, all sorts of different things. We say the body, and we know what we're talking about. Even though what we're actually talking about is enormously complex, and you could spend, a year studying your finger, right? There's doctors that do that. That just, if you go to the doctor, it's a specialist, for your nose, your elbow, or something, right? Because each one of the parts is a world in and of itself. So the word body represents this enormously complex functioning thing. Well, so does the word mind, which represents the functioning of thought, and so does the word ego, which represents the functioning of the sense of I, the sense of identity that has identified with the body. But the nature of that functioning is one of resistance. Eckhart Tolle calls it the pain body, which is a great term for it. There's just this energy that is perpetually unsatisfied, and is trying to satisfy it. We all feel that. Now, what happens if you just stand back and let it be there? You watch it. At the same time, you become aware that what it's resisting is what's actually happening. Now, which is the more intelligent position to take? Resistance, this shouldn't be happening, or acceptance that, oh, this is what's happening. Now, at first, that can seem really difficult to do, but that's only because we've been kind of indoctrinated into this idea that somehow the universe, reality, is not benevolent. But of course, that feeling that life is not benevolent, that it's not taking care of me, that I really am in trouble, is the essence of the separate self. If there's no sense of a separate self, that doesn't arise. You're one with the universe. How could it possibly not be taken care of? You're it. We like to say, well, there's the universe and then there's me, as if the universe stopped here, right? And there's something else here. I always get a laugh out of the thing in The Secret of the Genie. You just ask the universe, and people kind of pick that thing up. I'm asking the universe for what I want. Well, please show me the difference between you and the universe. It's a very deep perceptual mistake. It's totally inaccurate, and it's created the sense of a separation from the whole that doesn't actually exist. That means that to reharmonize with the whole is to simply love this moment just as it is. Those of you who are fans of the power of now, that's what the whole book talks about. Dropping our argument with what is. This shouldn't be happening. Who said it shouldn't be happening? Where did such a thought come from? It is happening. For whatever reason, this particular set of circumstances has arisen in consciousness. Now, one caveat I want to put on that before I start look at the questions, is that when I say be completely loving what is, I'm not talking about trying to love your story about what is. Right? Something happens, an event takes place. The mission is to actually see the event just as it is. But we don't. We experience not the actual events of life. We experience our interpretation of the events of life. We look at them, and of course, at the heart and soul of that interpretation is, this shouldn't be happening, it should be something else. So we've got this whole characterization of every event and how it fits into our own personal narrative that is the egoic mind. Drop it all. And you can, and you can do it that quickly. Realize that you have no idea whatsoever what it is that you are, that is actually happening. And then let what's happening express it to you directly. You see through all of the illusions. And you actually experience life as it is. Now chew on that for a second. I got to check something. Somebody just came in the door that I was not expecting. Okay, I'm back. So, without further ado, please like, thumbs up thing, share. Let's see what we got happening here. Dave and Eileen are here. Greetings from Southeast England, where summer appears to have started. Yes, very good. Very good show. Chris Skills. Hi, Chris. Good to have you here. Can you speak about content, about the content which society has given us? It's full of shit, and now when I think about it, I don't know why they fill our minds with this rubbish and keep us from knowing the truth. They fill our minds with the rubbish because it makes them a lot of money. This world revolves around money. They would sell anything and not be bothered what psychological damage it does. That's actually incredibly true. That is totally true. What we're looking at on the world is the ego running amok. It is selfish, it's resistant, it's aggressive, it's hateful. We're seeing amplified on the world stage the characteristics that inevitably arise in the sense of a separate self. Um, Remember, when the sense of self, separate self, arises, it gives birth to two very powerful energies, the fear of death and the fear of lack. And they're very closely related. Because if I don't get everything I need, I die, right? So it's an incredibly deep fear that arises when that sense of being a separate self first emerges. Out of the sense of lack arises that fear of going without, and that fear of going without can lead to being very, very constricted. I'm just holding on to what I have. It can also lead to greed. Greed rests on the sense of lack, and so I'm going to hoard. And obviously some people are way better at it than others. Now, over time, right, the idea that somehow this accumulation of stuff, this accumulation of wealth, makes me superior in some way, makes me better, makes me chosen more by God. And you even hear, TV preachers talking about, how God wants you to be rich and all of that sort of thing, which is completely off the mark, by the way. So it ends up being the way in which the egoic mind convinces itself that it's something of value. And so money has become, instead of just simply being an interesting and creative way of us exchanging goods and services of unequal value, it becomes the measurement of value. I mean, I always find it peculiar when they talk about some natural disaster is occurred. First thing they tell you is how many people died, and secondly, how much it cost. The value, the monetary value of the damage that was done. I mean, so far we haven't got so bad that they've inverted that. At least they put the dead people first. Although for a lot of people they're not at all concerned about that. They're only concerned about the monetary value. And so yeah, we have gotten kind of stuck in this framework, and over time it's become so extreme now that a very small group of people control the media, they control the resources, they control the monetary, they control everything, right? And they're not satisfied. There actually have been studies of what happens when somebody as they become increasingly wealthy. And there are very clear psychological patterns that happen, none of which are healthy. There is a disassociation. There's a bloated sense of self-importance that allows for even mistreatment and cruelty towards others. There's an entitlement mentality that develops. But coming back to what we're here to do, I highly recommend that people march. I'm looking for ways to protest. Now we want to go in and bomb Iran. I know the reason I want to do that. I want to steal the resources, and we want to give more money to defense contractors. We want to bankrupt the United States. That's why it's being done. That's the real motivation. Nobody can admit to that, right? So I'm all for get on the street, protest. It does make a difference. But in this setting of satsang, we have to look deeply within ourselves. If you really want to eradicate that kind of thing from the world, we have to eradicate it from ourselves. And we have to rise to a completely new level of understanding and love. The worst person on the planet that's ever been is acting out his programmed responses just like you and I are. They're just different. Take any kid, right? Take any kid from the poorest family and stick them in a rich family, and in a while they will take on that mentality. And the mentality of various cultures and economic status in the United States, at least, does represent a different culture. The uber wealthy are a different culture. It is not the same as the other. So they have their mores, they have their axioms, they have their truths, they have their, and those are programmed in. So many people feel they can do harm to others, and they don't give it a second thought because it's simply the way they've been programmed. You know, because you've been programmed for wealth rather than poverty doesn't mean it's not a program. As much as you want to pat yourself on the back and say that it's, you know, all the things you've accomplished, you're still the robot. Our job here is to wake up from identification with that which is not actually a conscious entity, but only a functioning of life. And so the sense of self needs to be detached from the sense of the separate self and go back home to that pure sense of being that is the reality of all of us. Seeing that, realizing that what you're dealing with, when you're talking about all the things that they do in filling our minds, giving us it's full of shit and everything revolves around money is absolutely true, but it's they believe it in the same way that you believe in lack. It is a different psychological reaction and sense of identity that's grown up in exactly the same garden, and the garden is the sense of separation. Without that separation, I live in infinite abundance. Why would I hoard anything? Greed can't possibly exist. Right? It has to have the sense of lack. And so you can look on those people as Christ did. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Now, I know it's very popular to be really antagonistic and angry and aggressive towards, you know, the people who are just literally destroying the planet for their own benefit. And it's not that we shouldn't try to stop them, right? But we have to see them in exactly the way that Christ did, through the eyes of original innocence. They do not know what they're doing. They are acting out their programming, and they think their programming is correct. So in essence, they're no different than you and I are. And establishing our own sense of our inner innocence will establish it for all. And it will alleviate the antagonism and anger and aggression that perpetuates this. Right? It takes two to fight. And you'll actually find that you can obey the command that Christ gave, which is love your enemies. Because that love is the love that sees right into the heart of every individual. And what's actually in every individual is the true self, the true sense of I am. Even the worst mofo, right, is simply mindlessly acting out their programming. And they simply need to be awakened. And it is my deepest belief that it's happening. I'm just seeing, you know, pops and fireworks of awakening happening all over the place. And it is having an impact. Kindness, love, and self-valuing is making it into the rhetoric of politics. I think the new Prime Minister of New Zealand said that kindness and compassion and humanity is the platform. Right? That is the number one goal. It's happening. Right? You know, the most aggressive places are usually the last places to get it. So I hope that helps. I hope that helps, Chris. It's not that the experience isn't serious, even dire. It is. But the fact that it is so dire, that we really are being threatened, is what really will trigger, I think, the in-depth exploration of what's really true? What's really going on here? And of course, the only place you can really meet that is right here. You can't force somebody else to change their ideas about stuff. But if you yourself so well exemplify and magnify those characteristics, you're the light shining in darkness. It's simple as that. And that's what we need, more light shining in darkness. And that means dropping the anger toward it. When you understand who they are and what they're doing, and you're just dealing with the robot, getting angry with these people is like getting angry with your computer. It's a waste of time. Right? We're here to change the program. And where do you change the program? Here. You know, as you change that, as you become freer and freer and freer, the real nature of freedom, the real nature of prosperity, the real nature of life will become more and more apparent. Why? Because it's shining through you. So I hope that answers it for you, buddy. Hey, GP. Oops. All of a sudden I lost my thing here. Hi, GP. Do you drink alcohol? Is it okay to drink alcohol and sometimes get drunk if you are in the awakening process? Yes, I do. I enjoy a glass of wine. My son and I will sit around and have a beer and talk about stuff. It's like nothing can interfere with your awakening. Obviously, a lot of energy can get absorbed if it becomes an addiction, if it becomes an attachment of some sort. But, saying alcohol, food, shopping, anything, you'll notice that when they become extreme, they're an attempt to avoid feeling. And part of the awakening process is the open exposure of all of the programmed responses and seeing that they're not you. So nothing can get in the way of your awakening. Practice is. I know Zen masters who get hammered, right? So don't put anything in between you and the potential for awakening, because what are you awakening to? You're awakening to your own nature, right? It's your own nature. So nothing can change that, right? So, I don't recommend it as as a sadhana, but it's not going to be a problem. And post awakening, you're free to do whatever you want. There's just total freedom, right? But remember that after the awakening has occurred, it's not the end of the road. You're not a Buddha yet, right? and sometimes the awakening will come and go. It'll seem to come and go. Sometimes you'll feel really overwhelmed by thoughts. You have this beautiful glimpse of reality, and then 15 minutes later or 3 days later, it'll be gone, right? And you'll feel like you're back in the muck again. This is actually part of the process in which we really become capable of seeing clearly. And then we abide in that truth, not as an act of will, because it's not you that's waking up. It's awareness that's waking up. It's awakeness that is waking up to itself. You, what you've identified with as you, is what's being woken up from, right? So it's not, you can't control it. It's not your actions that make any of this happen. Right? You're fine because you become interested in this, is because awakeness is awakening to itself, and it's manifesting as you going, what is, wow, that's, and being drawn towards it. It's not actually even a choice that you're making. You're not doing it. That's the heart and soul of all of this. The you think you are does not exist. It's just a thought in the mind. And what does exist, which is the pure awareness and pure awakening, has identified with that thought. Now that may seem strange. How can pure infinite awareness identify with the thought? Don't try to figure it out. Just accept what is self-evident, that the idea of who you think you are cannot be who you are. It's just an idea. that who you really are is aware of that idea. But we think of who we really are must be some variation of this idea. It's not. It is completely separate from it. You are awareness. And awareness is simply becoming aware of itself. That's what's happening. So any of the stuff that pops up, and some incredible stuff can pop up, all sorts of karmic things can happen, and all sorts of whacked up things can come to the surface, but none of them change who you actually are. This is just the cleaning out of the muck. The light's been turned on, the room's getting cleaned out, right? So that more and more your human life is the literal incarnation of pure awareness. And that sense of oneness becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, and eventually you do emerge, first as a bodhisattva and then as a Buddha. So does that help to answer your question, my friend? Ein weichem Grid des Lebens. Sorry. Oh, I forgot. Hi, GP and everyone. Great to be here in France tonight. That's Marine, Julianne. Hello. Wonderful. Patang, hi, GP. Greetings from Israel. Sending much love and gratitude. Wonderful, wonderful. Awareness says, you made me cry, GP. The reminder to accept what is just what I needed to hear. Thank you. You're welcome. You're very, very welcome. You know, those tears are tears of relief. Our entire life is spent like this, trying to force things to go the way we want them to. Not realizing that the way we want them to go wasn't even our choice. It was just a product of all this conditioning that we've never actually checked. We're just so convinced this is the way it's supposed to be. We don't stop for a moment and say, wait a minute, what's closer to the truth? The way things actually are, or the way I think they're supposed to be? When you really look at it, it's an insane position to take. But that's the position. The ego's insane, right? I mean, let's face it, it's pathological. So, at any rate, I'm glad it touched you in the heart, and there's an enormous relief that takes place. You mean I can just let go? Yeah, you can just let go. Don't worry. You're not going to drown. Josh Bivens is from New Mexico. Says New Mexico here. Hi, Josh. Wonderful. David and Elaine. Non-duality can incorrectly be seen as nihilistic, and surrendering to what is perceived as defeatist. But clearly this is a misunderstanding of the reality of what you're saying. So thanks for that. Yes, it is. It's an idea of somehow it falls into passivity. If you see things as they are, let me put it this way. You've got this idea of what's supposed to be happening, and then there are things that are happening. If you hold to this, right, or you hold to, which position held is going to make you more resourceful and more capable of being present with and really responding intelligently to what is happening? The idea that it shouldn't be happening, and I'm going to, and I'm going to fight with it, or the acceptance that it is happening? Which opens up the resources for you to be actively engaged? It's obvious. Seeing it as it really is empowerment, right? Seeing it as you think it is, which means you're just pushing this away. This is just going to continue to go on, and you're just going to be miserable, right? The general on the battlefield all of a sudden sees a whole bunch of troops, enemy troops coming over the hill. He doesn't have any time to say, they shouldn't be there. Why did that happen? What's going on? Check into there. Where's my intelligence? It's too late, right? Not one bit of energy goes into that thought. It's like, this is it, boom, deal with it. What do we got, right? That's what it really means to be in this place of total acceptance of the way things are. And of course, there are some times when you realize there's absolutely nothing you can do, and you simply be with it. That's what's called compassion. You are simply being with what is, and waiting until the opportunity opens up for for something better to happen or improvement or something. But what's happening will change. That's the nature of life. It will change. So even if it seems really horrible, just wait it out. and if it does seem really horrible, ask yourself, well, why is it that it's horrible? And you'll find that the reason you say it's horrible is because you think it's supposed to be something else. Another opportunity to just drop your ideas. And how many times have you found yourself, literally circumstances forced you into something? You didn't want to do it, you hated it, you just dreaded the idea, and then you did it, and it was like wonderful. It was like, damn, why did I resist this? Because your idea of it and what it actually is were two different things. And you were very well trained into this habit of resistance, right? So that, no, push it away. Try to make it go the way I think it should go. In which case you're rejecting life. You are rejecting your own life. Boy, if I could just bring that home. Non-duality is not nihilistic. Materialism is nihilistic. To materialism, you're nothing but a physical structure. Which means that before you were born, there was nothing, void. Nothing, no consciousness, no nothing. And then after you die, there's nothing. So an infinite nothing in both directions is interrupted by just boop, this little blurb of conscious life and then gone. Materialism is totally nihilistic. Non-duality simply says, who you think you are not. It not only it doesn't die, it never started. It doesn't exist at all except as a thought. So it doesn't get born and it doesn't die. And so it points you to the one thing we can all agree on that has never changed, and that is your own sense of being. While what you have experienced has changed constantly throughout your life and is changing right now, the sense of the experiencing, the sense of presence that had the experience has never changed. It's the only thing we can point to that hasn't. Nihilism says, oh, so you don't exist then, right? And I'd say, no, you don't. Not as that. You do not exist as a thought. Obviously, something has to be there to cognize the thought. That which is there to cognize the thought, materialists say, is the body. But I say, non-dualists, Advaitists say, no, it's not. The body is just another changing thing that appears on the screen of consciousness, and consciousness doesn't change. Now, examining that sense of being, yourself, just the sense of being, none of the content, can you find a beginning to it? Can you imagine an end to it? Can you even conceive of not existing? Try it. Now, why is that? Why can't you conceive of not existing? Because you have to be there to notice that you're not existing. The sense of self is eternal. And I say that not to an infinite amount of time, because right in this moment, everything I've ever recognized has always come from the exact same place. I have no evidence whatsoever that it had a beginning or an end. The body, yes. But not this sense of it. Not at all. It's just personal exploration. Go, see if you can find a boundary. Right here, right now. Take it out of time. Right? Realize that if this is the same sense of being that was there when you were 3 years old or when you were 100 years old, it's not affected by time. It's not affected by what all the events taking place, which are what time is. Time doesn't exist separate from the events. It's just a word we've given to the flow of events. Take away the events, there's no time. For that which is perceiving, there are no events. The events are being perceived, but it itself is not an event. It didn't have a starting point. Look for yourself. Now, this is easy to see, but your mind is just going to be doing backflips going, what? What? Of course I had a beginning, because it's fixated on the body. The mind cannot perceive. Thought, which is dualistic and objective as by nature, cannot conceive that which is formless and non-objective. Right? Therefore, it's trying to make a concept of consciousness, but every time it does, it makes a boundary on it, right? It's got to make some kind of form. You cannot conceive of the formless. And consciousness, your actual nature, your actual identity, is formless. It didn't start at some point, and it's never going to end. So it's the exact opposite of nihilism. But it's also not eternalism. It's not an eternal person, like all of the Abrahamic religions believe in somehow the immortality of a soul, that you have an individualized soul, and that's going to survive the body. It's still a view of me as a person, right, separate from every other soul, going somewhere else. So this isn't that either. It denies that soul. That doesn't actually exist. That is an extrapolation, an abstraction of simply the sense of being an individual body person. So non-duality takes a position. It's not nihilistic, nor is it eternalistic. It is timeless. It is the timeless now. It is not eternal in that it is an infinite set of points in time. It lasts forever. Nor is it infinite in that it fills this infinite space. It is beyond space and time. And you can see it for yourself. If you are consciousness that was aware of everything that's happened in your life, and that has not changed, it is beyond time. It is the witness to time, but it itself is not subject to time. It is not part of time. It is outside of time. And the same thing is true of space. So does that help? Does that help there, David and Lean? Well, you were just making a statement, and I picked up on it and elaborated a little bit. Hope you don't mind. Haroon. Hey, GP. Hi, my friend. Sometimes I feel so constricted by old patterns. Yep. I know consciousness is not constricted, and that I should accept the whole thing. Right. But you can't accept the whole thing, can you? What if that is just one of the old patterns? We cannot bring about a transformation of the separate self. We try, but we can't. We cannot turn the separate self into the true self. The separate self is seen through. You just need to take it a step further. I feel so constricted by old patterns. Who is that I that you're referring to? What is that? Look really, really closely. And you'll find a feeling of being restricted. And some other time, you might say, I'm restricted because I don't have enough money. I'm restricted because I don't have a good relationship. I'm constricted because, I'm in pain. I'm sick, right? Or I'm constricted because of these old patterns, right? The I that says I'm feeling constricted is an old pattern. It's the mother of all patterns. That I is the robot. It is the pattern. It is the conditioning. We're not going to get Hiron free from conditioning. Hiron is the conditioning. Right? You are outside of it and the witness of it. And you don't have a name. You don't have a form. You don't have a history. Right? Everything you're witnessing is the entire universe of Hiron. And Hiron is simply the name given to the bundle of conditioning. Right? First it was given to the body, and then it just kept getting given to everything that came from the body, and all the limitations and all the constructs and all the thoughts and everything. This whole package of stuff, called it Hiron. And so when you say I, you're identifying with the conditioning and saying, I feel constricted. Well, of course, because the conditioning is constricted, right? So now remove consciousness from that. Remove you from that. That I isn't talking about you. It is not referring to you because the mind that is enunciating that word I cannot see you, doesn't know you exist, doesn't realize that its entire existence depends on you. It's got a completely different model of reality. That I is the conditioned patterns, all of it. The sum total of it is what it calls I, or Hirun. Hirun. Sorry, I keep doing that. You are not that. You are not constricted. Now, you can have a feeling of being constricted, but that doesn't mean you actually are. Do you see that? Just because a feeling arises, you go, we believe the feeling, it says, oh, I'm constricted. And then we have a bunch of thoughts say, oh yeah, well, we're constricted because of all these patterns and stuff, or because I don't have this, or, right? And on it goes. It's just a feeling of being constricted. But because I feel something, does that make it true? Am I actually constricted? Or is there just a feeling of it? And in a while it'll be gone, right? I mean, you don't feel like that all the time. So it comes and goes, doesn't it? So this feeling arises. Now you say, I don't want that to arise anymore. Well, that which does not want it to arise anymore is the conditioning. It's still the same self now who's made a new position. There's this conditioning, the universe, and I got to get rid of it, and then there's me, and then I'll be free. All of that is happening on this beautiful stage of consciousness. It has simply arisen to consciousness, which is not constricted in the slightest, which is always free. So it's simply the sense of I going back to that which was never conditioned in the first place. And being completely okay with what is happening right now. What's happening right now? There is a sense of being constricted that has arisen. Now, I can fight with it, I can argue with it, I can say you shouldn't be here, which is what the whole first part of Satsang was talking about, or you can say, oh, there's a feeling of being constricted. It has arisen. Why? I don't know. Do I care? No. Is it me? No. It is simply something that's arisen, something that for whatever reason it needs to be here. It's happening because it's supposed to happen. There it is. What does that have to do with me? Nothing other than I'm the consciousness to whom it is arising. And if I just sit there for a while, it'll dissolve. And then more and more, that sense, that word I, refers less and less to these patterns. And there is no I in them, by the way. There's nobody there. It's just a bunch of patterns. Just like, just like you run your car, there's nobody there. It's just a bunch of stuff together functioning as a car. Even if it was a very sophisticated robot, there'd be nobody there. There's no sentience. Right? It's just very complex functioning. Well, that's all this is. Very complex functioning. There's no I there. There's no self there. You're not in that. You are what animates everything, and that which animates is not stuck in any form. So you have never been constricted. But that doesn't mean you're not capable of feeling constriction. Just the way you can feel bliss, you can feel grief. Now a thing that arises as part of this idea of being the separate self is a preference for one over the other. But consciousness itself has no preference like that. The actual awareness is not the least bit concerned about what's arising. It doesn't ever feel threatened. It may feel the sense of being threatened, but it itself, you yourself, are never threatened. Is this helpful? Is this helpful, buddy? Yeah, I feel the constrictions too. Sometimes I feel so constricted by old patterns. Yep, I do too. But I've just gotten to the point where I know that it's just a feeling, and it's not the truth. What's the truth? I'm not constricted. How could I possibly be constricted? I have no boundaries. Go ahead, check for yourself. Find the boundaries of consciousness. Right? You see, it's not constricted. So if it's not constricted, then the feeling of constriction is just a feeling that has arisen. And if you don't identify with it, if you don't give it a personhood, if you don't turn it into a self, especially myself, it will just be there for a moment and then fade. Is that helpful, buddy? Chrissy. Hi, Chrissy. Hi, G and everyone. Chrissy from New Zealand. Loving being here. Thank you. Good to have you. And I know it's probably late there, isn't it? It's the next day for sure. Let's see. Roman says, if only consciousness exists, the greed of ego must be a modulation of consciousness. It's only Leah. Yes, Roman, that's actually true. Now, this is a hard one to grasp. I don't know why consciousness, this arising, is arising the way it is. Perhaps it simply has to become this ugly for awakeness to awaken. Maybe this, I don't like to speculate about that. Instead, I just go, okay, it's here. Greed has arisen. There's no point in denying it, right? Is my nature greedy? No, because I'm infinite abundance by nature. So it's not what I actually am. But I'm watching it arise, and I'm seeing evidence of it around there. So yeah, even the sense of ego and all of the functioning upon which the ego that has been called the ego, and even the the illusion, the delusion of projecting a sense of self onto that, which is what all the ego is, has all arisen. Thanks for everything. I have no complaint whatsoever. Right? If you drop all preferences completely, pure awareness has no preference for what arises. You drop it all completely. As much as you might not like it, you just say, well, okay, this is what is arisen, and so what? And it's going to subside. Everything that arises subsides. Everything that begins ends. And so will this. And don't let it become an obstacle to self-realization. That you are that pure self that is aware. And even preferences arise and fall. And so yes, everything must be a vibration in consciousness. And the only reason they become powerful, and the only reason they even stick around, is because we identify with them. Well, awareness identifies with it. Now, that may sound strange to you, for me to say that. How can awareness identify that? But the sense of identification and projecting of a sense of self does arise within awareness. We're witnessing it happen. So this idea of just completely loving what's here, accepting this moment as it is, runs very, very deep. It's not just some nice little idea, because sometimes the moments look really horrific. If I'm standing there about to, be killed or something, this moment doesn't look like it's particularly a good thing to arise, and I may feel a bit of a sense of resistance to it, right? But we have a wonderful example of somebody who did face that and didn't have any resistance to it, which is Christ and the story of his crucifixion. Matter of fact, when Pilate asked him what this was all about, what he was here for, who was he, what was he doing, he says, I've come to bear witness to the truth, which was completely truth. And Pilate, a well-educated Roman guy, access to, Greek, all sorts of stuff, says, what is truth? And Jesus didn't say a word. Why should he? He was it. It was standing there right in front of them. But he didn't have the eyes to see it. He did not enter anything into his own defense. He completely surrendered to the moment. And the end result is that his teachings and words have endured for 2,000 plus years. Distorted, a lot of it distorted, but the gems, the essence of what he had to say has not been distorted. It's still here. It's still active within consciousness. So it's very, very powerful to surrender to what is, to surrender to the inevitable. All the while, always looking for the opportunity to improve, to grow. I mean, it's this wonderful interplay between the relative and the absolute. But it all comes from just this open-hearted willingness to say, show me what's true. I just want to see what's true. And that's really all we're doing here, is taking the time to see what's actually true. Icy Cool, great name. Hi G, love your work. Listening to you here in the UK, all the best. Thank you, Icy. Rohan says, wow, it feels like you've been addressing my question directly during your whole introduction. Beautiful. I'll ask anyway. So this is what came up for me today. This is Rohan. I don't know if I mentioned the name. Why do I sometimes get annoyed or cringe in contempt when I perceive others as arrogant or contrived, especially those closest to me? I want to learn to love in those moments. Should one try to overcome conditioning by updating interpretations, or is no interpretation best? I'm not sure how to allow all my conditioning or how to drop all my interpretations in that moment. Well, it's a life's work, by the way. It's not like, oh, all my conditioning, gone. I mean, I call it post-awakening sadhana, right? Even after the sense has even dawned on you, just a little bit, that maybe, or even the possibility, well, maybe I am just consciousness. I mean, consciousness is always the thing that I experience. And sometimes it can be a full-blown insight. My God, this is what I am. Everything is appearing to that. Nothing exists separate from that. It can be an explosion like that. But even then, the conditioning is going to appear. When people say I had an awakening experience and I lost it, what they really mean is they had an awakening experience and they started believing their thoughts again. Awakening has an awakening experience. Only awakening. Only awareness is aware, right? So only awareness can say, I am aware. Right? And if I ask you right now, are you aware? You're all going to say yes. Well, guess who's answering? Only awareness. That which is not aware cannot say, I'm aware. Only awareness is aware of awareness, is aware of anything. Which means if you say, I am aware, you are not talking about this person, you're talking about awareness. The person, once it becomes a little bit more nuanced, a little more subtle, a little bit more developed, when you see that, oh, this is just conditioning, it's not actually who I am, the person's still there. The sense of a separate self now jumps up and goes, damn, I'm a non-dual person now. I'm going to overcome all my conditioning, right? You don't have to overcome conditioning. You have to simply see it as conditioning. Mindless, selfless, there's no self there, there's no person, there's no nothing. It is just conditioned patterns. It is only our identification with them that gives them any kind of staying power. And by identification with them, I also mean identification in resistance to them. Trying to get rid of them is more conditioning. This is the separate self trying to improve itself, trying to become a better spiritual separate self. This is, GP trying to awaken. Well, GP can't awaken because he doesn't exist. Right? Functioning can't awaken because there's nobody there. It doesn't exist. That which is the only thing that can awakening is awakeness itself, is awareness itself. That which is aware is the only thing that can become self-aware. So you don't need to update your interpretations. Now, your interpretations will get updated because the more you see that it's just conditioning, you start letting go of your opinions, start letting go of your ideas of what you think is happening or should be happening. You people will see you, man, you really go with the flow. Yes, you do. Because that's all there is the flow. There's no sense in fighting the flow, right? I use the example of it's like standing in the ocean trying to push the waves out to sea. It's a waste of time. In Zen, they would say, it's easier to ride a horse in the direction it's going. So you don't need to update yourself. You don't need personal self version 3.0. You don't need it, right? It's all in the seeing. And it's all in the knowingness. I keep referring back here to make sure I'm covering everything. So when I say to allow your conditioning, what I mean is to not get in a fight and try to push it away, because the only thing that tries to push it away is more conditioning. You're simply going to stand back and you're going to watch this thing happen. You're going to watch it. And the more you watch it, the more you see that in its essence, it's nothing but a bunch of feelings and sensations running through the body. That's all it is. And all the rest of it, all the conditioned responses, are interpretations of that. The more you are with the actual sensation itself, the more the interpretations fall away. And you see it, there's nothing to interpret. What is it? It's a feeling. It's a sensation that's arisen. Why did it arise? Well, something happened in the environment, it arose. That's it. That's all there is to this. It is infinitely simple. So you don't need to, how do I drop them? You don't need to. You simply need to see them as they are. In the seeing of them as they are, disidentification takes place. When disidentification takes place, that which is holding all of the conditioning in place begins to subside, and the conditioning, of course, just, because nothing is holding it. It is not self-existent. It isn't holding itself, right? It is not self-aware. It is just something arising in consciousness. And you are consciousness, nameless, formless, boundless, birthless, deathless. You are consciousness. Yes, thank you, GP. I just said it now. Everybody always says that, JP, and I don't know why. I just said it. Anyway, yes, thank you, GP, with a little smiley from Ein Feisach im Gewebe des Lebens. Can you give me a nickname? Make it a little easier for me. John M. asks, any insights on play and creativity in daily life? Thank you, namaste. Oh my God, yeah. Without fear, life is a celebration. That's a quote from Francis Lucille, and I absolutely adore it. I want to give credit where credit is due. Without fear, life is a celebration. With fear, life is a burden. Period. When we first feel that sense of separation and fear arises, from that moment on, our entire life is devoted to compensating for that fear. When that fear is gone, life becomes a total celebration. Everything that was difficult before becomes easy. This moment becomes wonderful. The taste of my homemade almond milk latte becomes divine. The water gets turned into wine. Life becomes a celebration because it's without fear. And of course, there are times when the fear is less. And we play, we're creative. We love creativity, right? I mean, I've made my entire living being creative, right? I'm doing right now is being creative. Now, am I being creative? Is GP creative? People say that because they don't know that there is no GP. He doesn't exist. It's just a word that was made up. Creativity and play are the nature of awareness. They're the perfume of awareness. Infinitely creative, eternally creative, inexhaustibly creative. Look at the universe. The entire universe in its entire history, and God knows how many other universes. Everything from just the spinning of a star to the growing of a blade of grass, to Shakespearean play or Beethoven's symphony or a Jimi Hendrix guitar solo. All of that has emerged from exactly the same place. And that place is you. So creativity is, like everything else, is not a personal possession. People call me wise. It's not really accurate because there's no me here to be wise. Wisdom does not belong to anybody. Wisdom simply appears. And it just happens to be appearing in this particular form. Fine. I didn't choose it, right? That is, the sense of a self didn't choose it, right? It chose it. I mean, that's why it's here. That's why you're here, right? So to truly free up creativity and play, we must transcend the sense of being a separate self. We must transcend fear. It's not easy, necessarily, but with the right guidance and the right persistence and the right earnestness and the right willingness to be constantly examining that sense of I. Every time I say I'm not feeling good, to say, wait a minute, what is that I pointing to? Okay, there's this feeling here, and then I say, I am not feeling good. I'll put the I aside, and now there's just a feeling. And without the I, there's no judgment of the feeling, right? There's no criticism of it. It's just a feeling that's there. And at that moment, suffering disappears. At that moment, fear disappears. Because there's no resistance to it, right? Even the idea whether it's pleasant or unpleasant disappears, and it just becomes feeling, pure experience. Somebody just told me my voice is breaking up. Is that true? Let me just really quickly. Re-plug it in. Please, somebody type. I'll see it on the screen here. Type. Can you hear me okay? Everything's good? All systems go? I have to give a second because there's a 20-second delay. So I have to wait until I say it. Okay, now I'm saying it. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm pretty sure that if my lips are moving and there's no sounding coming out, that you'll be telling me shortly. Hear you? Yay, great, thank you. David Smith says, so the separate self is like a character in a movie. If the movie is good, we identify it and suffer for no real reason. Yes. And as we all know, movies are never all good, right? If there's no conflict in the movie, we don't want to watch it, right? It's boring. There's got to be some, even if it's a romantic comedy, right? There's got to be some kind of conflict, they miss each other until finally at the end, cue the violins, right? The only difference between a tragedy and a comedy, because there's always tragedy in the comedies and there's always comedy in the tragedy, the only difference is where they happen to say the end. That's it. Wherever they fade to black, then I call it a tragedy. I call it a comedy. But yeah, it's a good metaphor for it. The character in the movie, but the character in this case is completely imaginary, right? It's like that in the movie. You see the body moving around and and people are talking, but there's not actually anybody there. Yet the character, right, who in fact, especially if it's fiction, doesn't even actually exist at all. It's a character made up by somebody, and I've got people acting out parts. So that character doesn't even exist on the screen. It only exists in your mind. The character of the whole story is completely your mind projecting that character onto the images on the screen. And that's all this is. All of the stuff, the functioning of life that's happening, from the most natural and expansive to the most constricted and confined and conditioned, are all being experienced in exactly the same way. And there's no person doing it. The person has been projected on all of this activity. There's not actually anyone doing it. There's not anyone sitting here talking to you. Talking is happening. There's nobody sitting there listening. Listening is just happening. The idea that there is someone listening, someone talking, someone getting it, someone not getting it, is completely imaginary. That's the big illusion. That is the thing we wake up from. When we wake up, it's not that all of this suddenly goes away. Of course not. Right? We just no longer mistake it for ourselves. And so it's okay. Let it be there. It's great. And when it's not great, it's not great. Fine. No problem. So if we identify with it, if the movie is good, we identify it. But yeah, it's important to note that whether the movie's good or not, we identify with it. There's people who really identify with their bad movies. I mean, don't you have probably some friends who've told you how terrible their life is? Right? They're very identified with the bad movie, right? Now, a lot of us have had bad movies, and we've probably even started onto the spiritual path or maybe personal development or something because we've really wanted to try to change the movie, right? We want to have a better experience, not realizing that it's the movie, right? And so even on the spiritual path, people are thinking, oh, I'm going to awaken, and right? But that character is the character in the movie. You awaken from the character in the movie. The character in the movie doesn't wake up because there's nobody there. Shake them all you want. There's nobody there, right? The guy in your dream doesn't wake up. You wake up from the dream. Which, of course, begs the question then, well, who am I? So your whole sense of identity has been based on this person in the dream. You think that's who you are. Which means who you really are, you have no idea. And, in fact, you can't have any idea because who you really are was there before thought. It's prior to any feeling, any thought, any sensation, any circumstance. Because you have to be there first, right? So you can't know yourself in the way we normally think of knowledge. And yet, do you not know that you are? That's direct knowledge. That's direct self-knowledge. We have just mistaken that sense of being, I know that I am, and we think, oh, well, that what I am is, oh, this character, that's what I am. Nope. No. No. Just put that aside and just go back to the unknowable you. How do you know that you exist? I don't know, I just do. Somebody could press me on how, and I go, I don't know. I mean, the only way I could answer how is if I could find some kind of point in time when I didn't, and then I do, oh, well, this happened and my parents accidentally had sex. They didn't really do it very much. And, and completely, unfortunately, from their perspective, got pregnant, and here I am, right? But all that's just, I'm sitting here looking at this image, trying to explain something, and I go, I don't know. I don't know where I came from. They tell me that's where I came from. I have a lot of hearsay evidence, but I don't know. I really don't know. But I know that I am. It's a different level of knowledge altogether. It's a different way of approaching knowledge. You're not the one in the dream who you think you are. GP he's the guy in the dream. GP doesn't actually exist. It's a name given for all of this functioning. There's nobody there, right? So who is here? It's nobody you know. It's almost as if you're a stranger to you, except you're not. Because you know that you are, right? And that self-knowledge, that true self-knowledge has been with you the entire time. It's never not been there. No matter what's appeared out here, that's been here. That's more intimate than intimate. It's closer than close. Right? As close as you can get, as intimate you can get, there's still two. This is one. It's what you are. It's your existence. Where did it come from? It's always been. There's no need to ask how did it get here, because it's always been here. Wow. Anne, hello Anne. In dealing with the experience of depression, is it effective to direct my I am to joy, love, etc.? Yes, absolutely. On one level, the whole idea of affirmations and the like, and I'm actually producing a set of affirmations to do with tapping right now, and they're all about that. I am love, I am joy, I am happiness. Because there is a place for that. Now you can do that, and you can start from the perspective of saying, I am safe, I am love, I am happy, right? And it will help, because it's closer to the truth than I am miserable, I am a jerk, I'm struggling, right? It's closer to the truth. It's not the truth, but it's closer to the truth. And it's closer to the truth because love and peace and prosperity and joy and goodness are the aspects, the perfume of the self. Right? And their imaginary opposite of lack and pain and suffering and all that are an imaginary opposite. Right? I mean, goodness and abundance and truth are the truth. And because they're the only truth, you could say that the truth transcends both truth and error. Because if all there is light, then there is no darkness. There's not even a concept of a darkness, but there's also not a concept of light. It's just what is. So if you want to deepen that practice, when you're thinking of I am safe, I am love, I am peace, focus your attention that when you say that word I am, you are speaking as the self. The self. Not as a person trying to experience more safety or more peace. Because it may have an effect, it will have an effect, but it'll only be temporary. And in some instances can actually reinforce the sense of a separate self. So when somebody wants to do an affirmation, I say, great, do it. And every time you say the word I am, remember that you're referring to pure awareness. That it is God herself, or himself, that is saying, I am peace. Now, of course, for God, yeah, I am peace, perfect sense. I am all, I'm everything. It makes perfect sense. Now, if we try to do that as a separate self, it won't be true. Only God can say, I'm God, right? The separate self can't say that. And all the affirmations in the world aren't really going to do that. We need to see through it. Take the position that you're actually in. Be the self, because that's actually what you are. So consciously, when you're affirming an I am statement like that, remind yourself that that statement is the absolute truth for the self, the true self. That the I am is chanting. The I am is meditating. The I am is affirming. The I am is eating dinner, right? Awakeness is awake. Awareness is aware. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Anne. I just saw something pop up. Dr. David Maloney, Psychotherapy. GP, you've given me a breakthrough. Previously, I'd always been trying to create a feeling in stillness, to reach a level of consciousness, whatever that means. I'm just now noticing what's there. God bless you, brother. God bless you, Dr. David. Yes. Yes. You are, the sense of a separate self tries to create a feeling of peace, to create a feeling of stillness. And that's where we kind of get off, because we can do that somewhat, and then we lose it and we wonder what's going on. And then the spiritual journey appears to be this really burdensome discipline of always maintaining this state, which nobody can do. Buddha couldn't do it. Nobody can do that. So what that really is a recognition that stillness is what you actually are. And in front of the stillness, disturbances can appear, but they don't change the stillness. You are looking from stillness. You are looking from peace. You are looking from reality, because you are reality. So it's always where you're looking from. You can only look from awareness, right? Because otherwise there's no awareness. Awareness is aware. So it's awareness that's looking. It's awareness that's looking through your eyeballs right now and seeing me on the screen. Hello, awareness. And it's an enormous breakthrough, and an enormous amount of stuff comes off your shoulders, because you don't have to try to be awake. You simply recognize, this is my nature. You see that this is what is actually always been happening. But we created a different version of it. We created a different world completely within our minds, and then got trapped within the walls of the mind. You've never been in there. And frankly, the one inside those walls can't wake up. Because they don't exist. So thank you for sharing that with me. Yeah, you don't need to create the feeling. Is that what that means? Just there. It's just there. It's what's there when you just simply go, oh, the sense of being. I am. That sense of being. Is it vibrating? Is it disturbed? Is it unstable? Does it come and go? I mean, just really stare at the sense of being and look at it. And you'll notice that it possesses all of the characteristics that we associate with enlightenment. So enlightenment isn't really a state you attain. It is simply awareness recognizing itself. And I say it like that, because you are that awareness. It's you recognizing yourself. It's realizing you're not this guy in the dream. No matter how hard he tries, he just can't quite get it right. You're not that. Back up a bit. Rohan says, thanks so much, GP. If there's still time, can I ask you about why consciousness is not experiencing all minds, things at once? Well, it is. It is. Look at your experience. You see, what that is a speculation that somehow consciousness, infinite consciousness, should be able to see through all eyes simultaneously. Why? Where did that come from? Where did that idea come from? Focus your attention on what you are actually experiencing, not a speculation of what it might be. And what I realize is that I am aware of everything. Everything comes and goes within this awareness. I'm aware that, okay, over there's this other person, and so I assume, well, they must be awareness too, right? And so there's a little consciousness here, there's a little consciousness over there. Well, that can't be the case, can it? If consciousness has no boundaries, there's only one of them. Now, I don't know about what's that over there. You know, as far as I know, I could be in a mental institution right now yelling at a wall. I mean, I cannot trust the truth of what I am perceiving. I cannot trust, is it objective, is it subjective? There's no way to step outside and know that. So instead, I go for what I do know. Because no matter how deluded I might be, how stoned I might be, how many hallucinations I'm having, my existence cannot be a delusion. It's absolute. Without that, I couldn't even have a delusion. So my existence is unquestionable. Stay there. I don't know about others. I don't know about any of that stuff at all. I can't. So if I'm going to discover that, it's going to be right here that I discover it. And so you don't even need to concern yourself with that. All I know is that when somebody appears within my consciousness, they're now part of my consciousness. And yes, they seem animated, but I don't know what their actual experience is, so all I can do is from here. I realize that I perceive others in exactly the same way I perceive myself. That is, the sense of being as self. The awareness that is aware of this body and this mind, and also aware of the fact that there's a certain kind of attachment and identification with this body and this mind, that same awareness is aware of them. And in fact, this is no more me than they are. And they are no less me than this is. So, because if it's awakeness here, it's awakeness there. And it's the same awakeness. You know, the space in Washington and the space in New Zealand are the same space. Take all the objects out of it and where are the boundaries? Right? We say, oh, that space is different than this space. But that's only because we've put objects on it. You know, space is actually just the measurement between objects, just like time is a relative, the relative distance between two events. Space is the relative distance between two objects, relative to however you're measuring it. Take all of that out there, and what do you have? Take all of that out of that, and what do you have? Indivisible space. Consciousness is like that. Yeah. So the consciousness there and the consciousness here are not two consciousnesses. Matter of fact, I don't even think there is a word consciousnesses or awarenesses. I don't think there's a plural form for it, because there isn't two of them. There can't be. If there's two, it's bounded. There's a boundary. Right? If there's no boundary, and look, see if you can find one. I have numerous times, still can't find one. If it doesn't have a boundary, then there aren't two of them. There's only one. So whatever is looking through these eyes is looking through those eyes. It's got to be the same thing. 1 equals 1, right? There can only be one. There can't be one and something else. There can't be oneness in the sense of we're all unified. One is one. There can only be one. Thanks for that, GP. Chris, thanks for that, GP. I now understand people are lost in their egos, and even though it will be hard, I shall forgive them for not knowing. Yes. Yeah, and all you have to do is remember yourself lost in the ego, and forgiving them won't be too hard. When I think of some of the things I did, some of the things I said, some of the condescending bullshit I put out there at one time, it's not hard to go, I forgive you. You know, I mean, when you win your own forgiveness, it's so easy to just forgive the lot of it, because we're all bozos on this bus. We're all stupid. Right? We've all made exactly the same mistake. The result of that mistake has been different for every single one of us. But we all made the same one. We all had the same fall. We're all experiencing the same sense of separation. We're all experiencing the same suffering. All of us. And so somebody's lost in their ego. What does that mean? The ego is nothing but a defense trying to ward off the suffering. When you realize that, it's just, you just can't help but have anything but compassion, even for the biggest asshole on the planet. And we have lots of them. They're running countries. Carrie says, is that Carrie? Yeah, Carrie. Is it possible to have no self-referencing? That's what awakening is. It is the referencing of an infinite self. So, or in Buddhism they say no self. Same thing, right? So yeah, the ego can't. The ego has to have some kind of reference point, because without the reference point, it simply doesn't exist. But without a reference point, you still do exist. You don't need a reference point. You don't need a center. Matter of fact, if it's infinite in all directions, there is no center. Right? There is no reference point for the self, because there's nothing outside of the self. You only need a reference point when you need to define one thing in terms of another. It's the essence of duality. But if there aren't two, there's only one, then you could say that it is a self-referencing point, or you could say there's no reference point. Either one of those would be true. Either one of those would be accurate. Different ways of expressing the same thing, but again, go beyond the words into the meaning. So you can see that, well, there'd be no center to the whole thing, right? What would be the reference point? The infinite would be the reference point. That would be the criteria by which everything else would be measured, by the infinite, which is what you are. Does that help? Right? Does that help you, Carrie? Oh. You always hear me go, whoop. When I'm scrolling, sometimes for some reason it just suddenly jumps ahead, and I have to go back and pick up here. Voice breaking up. Got back. Thanks. Understand people lost. Got it. Dr. David, got to him. Jess M just gave me hearts and a namaste. Thank you. Carrie, at all? Is that in response to what I said, Carrie, or is that was that before that? All right, let me clarify that, because in our relative lives, in our everyday lives, a point of reference is absolutely necessary. I have a point of reference of GP. I got stuff to do. I got things to edit, videos to shoot. I got stuff. I got people in my life. I have a point of reference. My granddaughter has a relationship with me, with GP, right? With her grandfather. Now, that's not the absolute nature of who I am. It's a relative nature, but I like it, right? It's very nice. It's very good. My son has a relationship with his father, right? So don't try to take the depth of a non-dual perception of no reference point or an infinite reference point and try to fit it somehow into our everyday life. Your everyday life is nothing but reference points. You know, every role you play, father, mother, sister, brother, lover, blah, are all reference points. They're all a position you take, and you have an interaction based on that, based on those positions. Those positions will always arise. The only problem is you get attached to a position, you think that's who you are. That's the only problem. When there's no reference point in relative life, when a circumstance arises, so does a reference point, so does a position, so does a sense of value. It all arises simultaneously. And when that situation is passed, it all dissipates. Because it is a temporary rising and subsiding. You, of course, are not temporary. You don't arise and you don't subside. So you yourself do not have a reference point. But you, in your interactions, do. Right? So it doesn't mean you have to go, don't call me mother. I'm not mother. I'm the infinite. I mean, don't do that, right? Just be mother, knowing that you are the infinite awareness pretending to be mother. You know, enjoying being mother, right? Would you refer to it as God in drag? You're in costume, right? It's just that's not who you are, right? But not being who you are doesn't mean you don't actually have to be it, do it, act it out, be part of it, enjoy it, you know, be the friend, be the lover, be the companion, be all of those things. Just know that you are and you aren't at the same time. You are beyond it and fully engaged in it. This is the bodhisattva path. The depth of it is the full acceptance of your humanity. Many of you are familiar with the 10 ox herder pictures, a famous series of pictures in Zen, and the last scene is him just, just kind of looking out the window. The ordinary human being is the Buddha. The ultimate achievement is the total acceptance of your humanity. Again, what Anthony de Mello said before, enlightenment is total surrender to the inevitable. And so, your awakening, the whole path, everything that you're on, is just arising, just as it is. You're not doing anything wrong. You're not messing anything up. Everything is coming to you. Every single impulse is absolutely unfolding with utter perfection. James Breeden, hello GP. I hope yourself and everyone is doing well, and I am. Thank you, James. Give no. It's give me a little. Is some word. It looks like it's in Czech or Hungarian. I don't know what it said. And a little frowny face. What's the permanent state. Based on her question, is it possible to have no self-referencing as a permanent state? So the self-referencing is going to come and go because the self, the sense of self, the role you're playing will come and go. You yourself are the reference point, the self, existence, being, right? No reference point can kind of sound like nothing, nihilism, nothingness, right? It's not. It's the infinite reference point is being itself. It is everything. Everything refers back to your being, the essence of being. When a reference point starts becoming something other than that, it becomes relative. And if it gets believed to be something, to be a self, it now becomes bondage, right? But if it's just seen as a temporary reference point, like, you know, a little bit from now, I'll be grandpa, and I'll be hanging out, we'll be doing grandpa things, right? And then later, you know, after this, right now, I'm Guruji, right? Don't even like that. I'm, you know, this is the role. So at this role, I'm teacher. I'm giving satsang. But, you know, a few moments, I've got somebody that I'm going to be talking to, a dear friend of mine afterwards, and I'm going to be different. I'm not going to be that, right? I'll be downstairs with my granddaughter, I won't be that. I'll be having dinner with my family, and then I won't be that anymore. I'll be partially that. So those things just arise and fall. Because the true nature, the ultimate reference point, is infinite being itself, which means you can appear as anything. There's no limits on you. You can put on any costume you like. Does that make it clear for you, Carrie? James says, the ego is here to keep us in this illusion. It is just how it works or functions. In a sense, yeah. Although I would say more accurately, the ego is the illusion, and the one having the illusion is the ego. This is maybe a tough one to wrap your head around. But the sense of being in a state of illusion and the ego is in fact being perceived by something which is not an illusion, nor is it suffering any illusions. So even the one having the illusion is the illusion. Does that make sense? The one who appears to be asleep, right, is the asleepness. You don't wake that one up. You realize the one that's witnessing it has never been asleep. It's already awake. You've probably heard some gurus say, you're already awake, you just don't know it. You're already enlightened, you just don't know it. Oh. Because you're staring at a self-image that is not enlightened, thinking it's you, and saying, I'm not enlightened. Right? But it's enlightenment that's looking at it. Right? And that sense of being that, rather than being what you are, is all there is to the ego. It's just a sense of self projected on a bunch of functions. It is seeing a self where there isn't a self. It's seeing an entity where there's no entity. There's only piece parts functioning. There's no center to that. There's no entity there. There's no self-awareness there. The self-awareness is outside of it. And that's what you are, right? Because aren't you aware of it? Well, then you're the awareness. That behavior, oops, wait a minute. More and more I realize that my bad behavior, and I got a boatload, is a product of my conditioning. Yes, is your conditioning. Yeah. I recognize that behavior is the awareness, which is the real me, and with that awareness, that behavior fades to black. Yes, it does. It cannot stand in the presence of awareness, because awareness sees through it. It only stands when there's a sense of identification with it, which is what sustains it. And if that sense of identification is just conditioned patterns, and there's no self in it, there's nothing to hold it in place now. It'll come and go, come and go, come and go, come and go, and it'll have no staying power. There'll be nothing, no place for it to stick. You've removed Velcro from all the walls. And so it just passes right through. And now, I think I mentioned earlier, don't be surprised when it keeps coming. Don't think that's a problem. When things arise, they arise. Don't ask why. Right? And don't think, oh, I must not, this is still arising, it must be a problem. Because that's the conditioning as well. There is nobody who has been conditioned. The conditioned person is simply an image projected on conditioned patterns. Empty, mindless, selfless, conditioned patterns. Non-sentient. Right? And to recognize that, you're taking the energy away from them, which perpetuates them and makes them into a problem. They cease to be a problem, and eventually they will cease to arise. Right? Because there'll be absolutely no energy left. But that can take a while. They call them vasanas for a reason. They can come up and continue to come up, and you just keep going, well, okay, cool. Here they are again. Don't make any deal. The more you say, oh God, it's still rising again, it's got you. It has got you. A guru I respect a lot became angry when someone asked that question, saying it's not possible. Well, it's not possible relatively, but where do you find a reference point in infinite oneness? And infinite oneness would have to be the reference point, right? It would have to be an infinite reference point. Beingness itself is the only reference point. I am. That's it. Right? I don't know why he got angry about it. Did he get angry with you? I hope not. It's an innocent question. It deserves thought and pondering. Anyway, all right. Okay, Sisbron98, you can stop that now. Somebody else too. It looks like we got some trolls. Okay. How can we get through a breakup with a loved one? Ooh, feelings of rejection, guilt, etc. With these principles knowing. How to not take it personally. Thank you for your time. That one always tugs at my heart because, boy, there's nothing more that we like to do. There's nothing more important to us than our relationships. And give me one quick second while I just block this guy who keeps... how do I do that again? Oh, there it is. Okay. Remove. And remove. Nope, should be everything. How do I block somebody personally? Hide user on this channel, ignore report. Okay, good, they're all gone. Okay. It always makes me curious as to why people do it. What pleasure do they take of just getting on to try to annoy? Must be really difficult because I'm very difficult to annoy. Pretty frustrating. Okay, back to the relationship thing. I mean, relationships carry so much weight and so much hope and so much... I mean, what I say is when the breakup is, be completely and totally with your grief. No stories, no reframing, no trying to say, well, they shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have did this, or whatever. Don't go to any of that. Go... I have to block somebody else too. The best way to really move through the incredible pain of heartbreak is to embrace it totally. And by embrace, I mean, You're not going to like it, okay? I'm not telling you you're going to like it. But if you really let yourself feel completely what you're feeling, the natural function of grief is to realign the system. Look, if you're in a relationship with somebody and then it's over, right? Especially if you became really close, you're living together, it's a marriage, right? It ends in a divorce or a death or something like that. Remember, your energies have become intertwined, right? You know, when you're in a very deep romantic relationship, whenever you do anything, you always think of how it's going to impact your beloved, right? I mean, there's this everything is flowing together now, right? So your energy is no longer just here; it's doing this, right? And it's wonderful, right? It's doing it physically, it's doing it mentally, it's doing it emotionally, it's doing it spiritually. On every level of our being, this flow of very deep, intimate energy is flowing between you, right? And all of a sudden, for some reason, it gets lost. Well, the circuit's doing this now. It's completely discombobulated, right? Grief is not a problem. Grief is what we feel when the nervous system is adjusting to an irrecoverable loss. And now our minds want to say, well, it's not recoverable. Maybe we can do this. How we get back together? Or she was a jerk. She was horrible. She was, anything it can to try to keep from feeling that, right? And the longer you do that, the longer the grief will go on. If you are completely with it, it will resolve itself in the shortest amount of time possible. I mean, it may be quick, right? It may take a long time. I think I mentioned working with one woman who had a very serious breakup. She was an older woman, hadn't been in a relationship for a while. She even had some grandkids. She fell in love with this guy. They were terribly in love. I mean, just completely unified. And he just, out of the blue, says, I can't see you anymore, and disappeared. She was absolutely destroyed. Now, at that time of your life and that sort of thing, I mean, that could have ruined her for the rest of her life when she called me. So it took an hour and a half one day, an hour and a half the next day, and about an hour the third day. And I just kept her in the grief. She'd go off on a story. Why is he doing it? We don't care why. We don't know why. Come back. What are you feeling? We just kept back to the feeling. Every place she'd go off, I'd just keep bringing her back. Kept bringing her back. It was hard. Tears are flowing and everything. At the end of that, towards the end of that last day, it didn't even make it to an hour. It was just, the energy just calmed down. The system had reoriented itself. Everything was in perspective. She could see clearly. She could understand. And even though there was still the yearning that she missed him, the excruciating pain and suffering were gone. And that's what this is about. You can't make the missing go away, nor would you want to, because the only way you wouldn't miss them is if they didn't have any value, right? The act of loving is the act of giving value. It means something to you. So when it's a loss, it's a real loss, but we have to be really with it then, as loss, as irrecoverable loss. That's the truth, right? So this isn't Pollyannish when I say love what is, right? Love the grief. This is the truth. This is what's happening. Love what's happening. Be with what is happening. And if you make no interference for the natural flow of life. And you will watch life, the most brilliant, creative life, repair everything. Just completely reorient itself, because that's what it does. And the less you interfere with it, the faster that happens. Does that help there, buddy? Delgado F. Contemporary Classical Guitar by Laird Mintz. Hey, Laird. Thank you, GP, for another illuminating darshan. I seem to be always uplifted. Bless you, GP, Lard. Bless you, Lard. Well, that's why we're here, right? To uplift each other. Josh says that absolutely makes sense, obviously from my comment before. Delgado says, I appreciate so much your willingness to share light, truth, and love. Your hard work is very appreciated. I just recently found your channel, and thank you, with a little heart. Oh, thank you. It doesn't feel like hard work. Well, to get some of it does, setting up the lights and everything and make sure the sound works, and then when the sound doesn't work, and all sorts of stuff does feel like hard work. This does not. I'm actually refreshed by this because when I sit down for satsang, I disappear. Something just kind of take. I mean, I pop up every now and then. GP pops up every now and then, but something or other, But for the most part, GP's just gone. It's just awareness talking to awareness. It's just love talking to love. It's truth talking to truth. So, thank you so much. Hold for review. What does it say? I have no idea what that means. Another message retracted. Marine Julian says, thanks for this great satsang. The raised questions, and you're always clear and sharing fully resonate. Very good. Okay. Some Fran, some other things in different languages that I don't understand. I guess, let's see if we got any more. No, we seem to have exhausted the questions, and we're just at the time. So I guess if there's no more, this is a great time to bring it to a close. Thank you all for being here once again. Thank you for, thank you for giving yourself permission to explore what is the most important subject in the human kingdom. Right? When you consider that all your personal problems, the problems of everyone you know, the problems of the entire world are all based on a misunderstanding of who we are, then you realize the significance of this. Yeah, we can do things politically and economically, and we can change things, and we can make it better, and we should. For absolute certainty, we should, right? But none of those changes, however good it might be. Nisargadatta even once said that even the most perfect empire will fall under the weight of its own perfection. No matter how good we make it, if there's a sense of two-ness, it can't last. If there's a sense of oneness, it's eternal. And there is only one. And that one is your true self. It is the one that is looking through your eyes, and it is the one that is looking through these. It is simply, it is the same one. One equals one. If there's only one, then you and I are absolutely one. That the one seeing and hearing, and the one speaking and hearing is the same. That must be the case. Oh, thanks again, GP, and to the troll as well. Thank you to the troll. Thank you. Your answer helped me a whole lot. So respect you and what you teach. Thank you, GP. Many thanks. Love and blessing. Blessing to you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to all. I love you all.